So we have one button that actually does a thing. Let's make another button that does a thing. Let's make a button for favorite actually do something. Back in our JS, when we render the list item, we make the remove button do something. Let's make that button do something too. So item dot query selector. I'm going to put it on the next line just for readability. This time I will look for the class fave as well as the class button. And I will again add an event listener. I am listening for a click. And I want to this dot fave flick, I suppose. And we could go ahead and bind it to this at least, because otherwise we're going to run into trouble. Should we use our other tricks? Do we need to do anything with these? Yeah, why not? Let's pass them in. So we'll pass in the item and the flick. Because what do we have to do? We have to change the appearance of the item, right? We're going to change its background color. So it would be handy to have the item. And we're going to actually change some value in the flick. So when we first create the flick down here, we have ID and name. Let's go ahead and add fave false. So they're not a favorite by default. So that's what we're going to change when we click this. So fave flick doesn't exist at all yet. We need to write that method. So rather than remove flick, I'll make fave flick. Now I don't put a comma after it because it's a class. And once again, it is being passed the list item from the DOM, the flick, and the event. We're not doing anything with the event anymore, but it's there. Sometimes you might see people put an underscore before an argument name. That's just kind of a note to yourself. I'm not actually using this argument, but it's there. It's going to be passed in whether we use it or not. And maybe we want to remind ourselves that it's there, but we're not going to use it. So we just prefix it with an underscore. So we want to change the background color. I say instead of going item.style.background color, we add a class. We saw how class name works last time. Let's grab a list item here. Here's an li. $0.0.class list gives us this DOM token list, which is an array-like thing. And we saw we could say class list.remove. How about class list add? Think that's a thing? Class list add fave. Yeah, now it has it. So let's go into our CSS, and I'll just add a rule, something with a class of flick that also has a class of fave. Let's change the background color. Because in JavaScript, all I really want to do is say it's my favorite. How exactly we present our favorite differently, that's up to our style sheet. Let's make it this lovely teal that we used in our silly glowing text. Background color that thing. Sure. Refresh the page. Let's create something. Let's inspect it. That gives it to me as $0. $0 dot class list dot add fave. There it is. Remove fave. It's gone. Look at this. Classlist.toggle. What's that do? It added it and it returned true. If I run it again, it removes it and returns false. Interesting. So inside fave flick here, let's say item.classlist.toggle fave. See what that does. Refresh. Add some 21 Jump Street. Skateboarding space werewolf. That's a fave. Now it's not a fave. Now it's a fave. No, it's not a fave. You can turn it off and on. All right, so now we're updating the DOM. But we also need to update the array, right? What do we want to do? When I created the flick, I set fave to false. So we want to change the value of that. What do we want to change it to? What does toggle return? So if I toggle it on, toggle return true. If I toggle it off, toggle return false. So what if I just say flick.fave equals item class list toggle? Let's try it. The Hateful Eight. Kingsman, the Golden Circle. Let's look at our array, app.flicks. Presently, neither of them is a fave. Let's turn on Hateful Eight. Check that array again. And holy smokes, it's true. Hit it again. Back to false. I didn't even touch the array. What is this wizardry? Why did that work? Why the heck did that work? Usually when JavaScript surprises us, it's a bad thing. But this time, that's actually easier than it seems like it would be. Well, turns out objects, and arrays are objects, by the way. Objects are always passed around by reference. Do you know what passing an argument around as reference is? You use programming languages where you do that. So when I say render list item and pass flick, I am not passing a copy of flick. I'm passing the very same object. So if I make changes to it in this other method, it's going to change the original, even though I've already stuck it on the end of an array. When I stick it on the array, I don't stick a copy on the array. I stick the very same object on the array. So if I assign it to a new variable name or pass it to another method, it's going to change the original. So it's going to change it in the array. Even though we passed it to render list item, from render list item, we bound it to the fave flick method, and then we changed it, that's going to change it in the array. This does not happen to numbers and strings and things like that, not to primitive types, only to objects. Like what this is, like arrays, functions are also objects. But yeah, it's going to always modify the original, which if you're not expecting it, can be a big nuisance. But in this case, it's exactly what we want. That actually makes it a lot easier. So, a one-liner. Piece of cake. Let users toggle their favorite flicks. Lovely. Questions? Yeah.
So if you set a variable equal to that and you change that, are they pointing the same thing, or do you make like a copy?
Let's give it a shot. Let's say const food equals breakfast. What was for breakfast?
Cereal.
Cereal. Okay. Const grub equals food. Let's see, food. Let's see, grub dot breakfast. What was for breakfast? Somebody else? Kushali? What's for breakfast? Banana? Banana. Here's the big question. Food. Dot breakfast. Banana. Yep. So grub and food are exactly the same thing. We didn't make a copy of food and assign it to grub. We actually just have another variable name pointing at it. Copying objects is actually a little bit of a pain. It's easier in ES6. There's a shorter syntax for doing it, and we're going to do it later. Good question.